15 years ago, dungeons began to appear all over the planet. Along with them came the awakened, people who, overnight, gained extraordinary abilities. Yuya Shirasaki is part of this group, but unlike the others, he awakened without any talent. It's like being the only one in the group who doesn't know how to use the microwave. After a battle where he was the last one standing, the boy was mysteriously sent 10 years into the past, but now, if he were smart, he would have gone back just to buy stocks in Netflix and Apple. With a special ability that gives him information about all the dungeons and all the enemies, like Google Maps in a Dark Souls version. Determined to heal his sister and prevent the great catastrophe from happening again, he will need to push his limits and become the strongest awakened of all. The problem is that there are many beings willing to stop that from happening. The story begins in Tokyo, in the year 2034. Amidst the chaos, we see an injured boy lamenting the fact that his life is about to end, as if he had lost not only the battle, but also the Wi-Fi. Stepping on one of the corpses on the ground, a large dragon with red eyes stares at him. While the protagonist reflects on how he failed to accomplish anything he wanted, basically the medieval version of thinking about bills at 3 in the morning, we discover that 15 years ago, dungeons began to appear all over the world, along with awakened ones, people who gained incredible powers and started attacking the dungeons. 10 years ago, our boy joined this group of heroes, but lacking any talent, he spent his days being called useless by everyone around him, the kind of nickname that doesn't even need a badge. However, needing money to pay for his sister's medical bills, he decided to stay on the job, and he increased his knowledge about dungeons so he could be a bit more efficient. The problem is that, even so, he couldn't stand on equal footing with those who had abilities, and now he is about to leave this world for a better one. Hidden elsewhere, a little girl follows the news about the great catastrophe that exterminated 70% of humanity, because apparently, the news had nothing lighter to show. Observing the bodies scattered everywhere, the protagonist realizes he is the only one still alive. But, when thinking about giving up, he remembers that his sister asked him to protect everyone, even though she is no longer alive. Before his heart stops beating and the boy bursts into tears, crying in front of a dragon, always embarrassing. In the midst of the battle, our boy grips his weapon tightly and promises that he will at least land a final blow. Determined to stop him, the great dragon opens its mouth and unleashes an absurd amount of flames toward the young man, who, before being consumed, tries to throw his dagger. Suddenly, he finds himself falling into a completely white place and wonders if he is dead, or if someone forgot to pay the electricity bill. A message appears, confirming the hypothesis, and warns that the regression is beginning. The protagonist doesn't understand what that means, but to be fair, no one ever understands when a mysterious pop-up appears in the middle of life. With nothing to do, he continues plummeting until he disappears. Suddenly, he opens his eyes when called by someone. We discover that the young man is in the year 2024 in a Class E dungeon. In front of him, a girl asks what happened for him to lose focus out of nowhere. Stating next that they are from the same guild, she introduces herself as Arisa Miyanaga and also has no abilities, which is a great way to start a friendship. Thinking, Shirasaki says that name sounds familiar. Looking at his body, he realizes that his injuries have healed, even though he has no attribute that does that. And to make matters worse, his current level is 9. Moreover, all his stats are the same as when he became awakened. Desperate, the protagonist asks what year it is, and the girl responds with another question. Why is he acting that way? Quickly, he realizes he has gone back 10 years and wonders why the hell that happened. And what is with that voice that said the last eligible candidate died? Among all the changes, our boy notices that his skill list seems to be malfunctioning. Lost in his thoughts, he doesn't even notice a creature approaching, until Arisa screams, telling him to turn around. Grabbing his dagger, Yuya realizes he is facing a pack of smaller E-class wolves. Knowing that he needs to be at least level 12 to defeat the creatures, he concludes that he has no chance of winning. But he decides nonetheless to test his theory, because clearly it's a great time for experiments. Screaming, the young redhead says it's dangerous and they should run. But the protagonist decides to ignore her and go on the attack. With a single blow, he splits a wolf in half, something that honestly shouldn't even be possible in the tutorial. Miyanaga is completely in shock, like someone watching someone clear a game without ever doing the training mode. Seeing that he leveled up, our boy says he was right and turns to face the other monsters. Smiling, he asserts that the enemies finally realized where they got themselves into. The rest of the pack decides to charge, but they end up hitting the ground when the guy jumps back, a move that should have come with epic background music. Thinking, the protagonist notices that when they are together, one creature always positions itself in a blind spot to attack, so he just needs to know its location. Delivering another blow, Shirasaki annihilates the wolf that would have attacked him from behind. While the girl continues to not believe that this is possible, Concluding that his experience and knowledge haven't disappeared, our boy says he can fight against even stronger opponents, even being at a lower level, and besides that, ranking up will be much faster than the first time. We see that only one wolf remains, but not for long, as the prota quickly sends it to a better place. A message appears notifying that the physical reinforcement skill has exceeded 100% proficiency. Determined, our boy promises that this time he will rise to the top of the awakened. Approaching, the redhead asks how her friend got so strong all of a sudden. Lying, Yuya says that he recently studied the habits of smaller wolves and that, deep down, it was just luck. Chuckling afterward upon realizing that the young girl fell for the story, it is revealed that magical weapons can be found in dungeons and, often, such items have attached abilities that can be used by the weapon's wielder. Thus, as the awakened gets better, their proficiency increases and acquiring the skill permanently becomes possible, being a lifeline for those who awakened without talent. Out of nowhere, Kamachi Daiichi, the leader of the temporary group, appears shouting and asks what the duo is doing standing there. Very excited, Arisa says that the prota defeated a pack of wolves all by himself. Calling the young man a loser, the leader says that the creatures were definitely weakened or something like that. But, in any case, they must hurry, as he found a magical crystal that must have something valuable inside. When asked about the magical stones from the wolves, the guy tells our boy to take care of the job. He simply obeys and bends down to start, revealing that he is already used to that kind of treatment, since he has no talent. Suddenly, Shirasaki remembers that this expedition is for Kamachi to gain leadership experience, and that something very bad happened last time. Running, he reaches the duo and tells them not to touch the crystal. Irritated, the group leader asks if the young man is jealous and claims that item belongs to him. Shouting, our boy asserts that it's a trap. Trusting his word, Miyanaga asks Daichi to be careful, but he pulls his hand away from the girl's hand and tells her to shut up, stating, before placing his hand on the crystal, that they must follow his orders. An intense light emerges, and the guy says it wasn't a trap at all. But he changes his mind when faced with a Grey Fang, a special rank D creature. The monster tries to crush the duo with one of its paws but ends up hitting the ground, causing the young people to lose their balance and fall. Scared to death, the red-haired guy asks the creature to stay back, while activating his weak point detection skill. Without hesitation, he delivers the first blow. But his dagger hits the Grey Fang's skin and ricochets before falling to the ground. Leaving, the guy tells the duo to handle the creature and says he refuses to die there. Alone, our boy realizes he might be screwed, since the monster is way above his level, and last time, he couldn't even save Arisa, as he was busy trying to stay alive. Determined, he draws his dagger and states that he won't let that happen again. Yuya charges at the enemy and says he knows its attack patterns. With great agility, he dodges the first attack and, detecting a weak point, he counterattacks without thinking twice. The blow leaves the Grey disoriented, making the prota realize that he just needs to keep reading its movements and deal more damage. However, suddenly, the monster roars and something strange begins to happen. Jumping back, our boy escapes death, but ends up receiving several scratches as a gift, before being thrown hard against a wall. With a handful of his own strawberry juice, he says he has never heard of that attack, and concludes that, besides his knowledge of the future being useless, with that kind of injury, winning is impossible. Shirasaki begins to console himself, stating that he still has his arms and legs, and that it is too early to give up. Thus, he stands up and shouts, telling Grey to come at him. Suddenly, a message appears, notifying that all conditions have been met and that the Akashic records have been activated. A symbol appears beneath the protagonist's feet and, out of nowhere, he is taken to a library while wondering what the hell is happening. Shirasaki starts reading the skill window and realizes that this skill allows him to obtain all knowledge about the dungeon he is in instantly. Curious, he clicks confirm and a map appears. Astonished, our boy says that this is the kind of information anyone would kill to have. Raining on the parade, the monster attacks again to remind him that it is still there. The protagonist is forced to jump back to save himself, and says that at this rate, he will keep taking hits from the sides. With no way out, he decides to use the Akashic Records skill. A strong golden light fills the entire environment and, among several books, only one levitates towards the boy and begins to open by itself, stopping at the page that contains information about Grey Fang. Perplexed, Yuya says that the information is being absorbed by his mind instantly. Getting straight to the point, he accesses the part about the creature's specific patterns and, after a few seconds, smiles, stating that he now understands everything and that his opponent's time is up. The creature attacks again using one of its paws, while the protagonist reveals that the enemy's patterns change with each hit it takes, and the main indicator of this is the red lines, so when there are only 3, the creature can only release shockwaves with its right paw, which means there is no need to worry about the left paw at that moment. When hit, the monster screams in pain. Charging forward, Shirasaki uses what he already knows to dodge, concluding then that now that Gray is frustrated, its next move will be a full-on attack. The monster starts running towards the young man, who, after activating some of his attributes, understands exactly what needs to be done. Aiming at a specific point, he says that this will be his perfect strike. With the creature's screams, the protagonist asserts that he has got it now and, using all his speed, runs back to deliver more strikes with his knife. Doing a somersault to distance himself, Yuya returns to the ground to take a look at the damage he caused to the enemy. Quickly, he realizes that it is retreating, behavior that only occurs when it encounters a stronger opponent. Noticing that he is being considered superior, the protagonist asks with what eyes his enemy is seeing him now. Arisa begins to wake up from her faint and sees her ally charging at Gray. Worried, she tells the boy to stop. But it is too late, as our boy is too focused, thinking that his opponent just made its ultimate move, which is useless since he knows exactly how to escape. Without hesitation, he throws Komachi's weapon that was on the ground, hitting the creature squarely. Then, he jumps into the air and hits it using his own knife. Gray lets out its last roar before its eyes go lifeless, and, in the blink of an eye, Shirasaki reaches level 12. After some time, Miyanaga opens her eyes again and asks where she is. Holding the young woman in his arms, the protagonist feels relieved to see her well. Flustered and embarrassed, the girl asks what is happening. Setting her down, our boy says that was the only way he could think of to carry her. Regaining her composure, she asks if they were attacked by monsters. Confirming, Yuya says that Komachi was caught in a trap, but somehow, they managed to escape safely. Recalling what she saw earlier, the young woman wonders if that is true. Noticing the way he is being looked at, the protagonist questions if something is wrong. Denying, Arisa bows and thanks him for saving her. Thinking, the boy states that he avoided the problem earlier, but knowing what comes next, that is the best approach. Some time of walking later, the duo finally exits the dungeon, and they are relieved to breathe fresh air. The group leader appears and says they did well. But noticing the tension in the young people, he says that they don't need that. Since they managed to get out safely, being an idiot, the boy touches Miyanaga inappropriately, forcing our boy to take the lead to push him away. Startled, Daichi asks what the young man is doing. Yuya says he could ask the same, since besides falling into a trap, he abandoned them to die. Shouting, the red-haired guy tells the young man to shut up and says his decision wasn't wrong. After all, he is the leader and no one should dare question his actions. Seeing that the protagonist is about to be attacked, the young woman asks him to be careful. Our boy uses one of his attributes and dodges the punch, before grabbing Komachi's arm and throwing him to the ground. Writhing, the guy asks what the hell he just did. The prota says that it's exactly what he's seeing and asks if he should show it again. Shaking in fear, the young redhead says that if he reports the guy for the assault to the guild, he will disappear forever. Yuya states that he doesn't care. After all, he doesn't intend to stay in the same guild as someone like him. Then throwing Daichi's dagger while saying he doesn't need the item anymore. Screaming, the leader says he will never forgive him. Turning around, our boy apologizes to Arisa for making her witness the fight. The young woman says it's okay, and questions if he is really thinking of leaving the guild. With confirmation, she says she will feel lonely when the young man leaves. But Shirasaki asks why the girl doesn't leave too, since staying in the guild won't do her any good. Even agreeing, the young woman says she can't give up her career as the Awakener. Thinking, the prota concludes that his friend must have her reasons, just like him, who only managed to save someone after going back in time. Suddenly, Miyanaga says she would like to thank the guy again, because while she was unconscious, she saw him standing and fighting bravely and, even if it was just a dream, it encouraged her to try a little harder. Smiling, our boy concludes that the girl needs to carve her own path, and he shouldn't interfere. Both start walking, while the young woman states that she will get stronger just to support her friend, and thus, they can face a dungeon together. Looking at the sky, Yuya thinks it may not be long before that day arrives. We find out that after they exchanged contacts, the protagonist went to the guild to notify them of his departure. And as he was only seen as a helper, he was dismissed without any issues. On the street, he reflects on whether or not he should sell the magic stone he took from Gray, concluding then that there are more important things to do first. Our boy finally returns home and, while taking off his socks, someone appears and calls him brother. Trying to hold back the emotion of hearing that voice, he turns around and sees Kana, dressed in a beautiful pink apron. The prota starts to run and when he gets close enough, hugs his sister with all his strength. Surprised, the girl asks what happened. Not being able to tell the truth, he says nothing happened, and thus, the duo stays embraced for a while. Releasing his little sister, our boy apologizes, But the young woman says it's okay and that she made dinner, because for some reason she is feeling better. We find out that Kana has a condition called magical exhaustion syndrome, where absorbing magic causes pain and, even though the symptoms are mild at that moment, the tendency is for them to worsen, until the worst happens after a few years. Knowing there is a clue to the cure for the disease, Yuya promises that he will not lose his sister again. But for that, he needs to focus on his own abilities. More specifically, on the Akashic Records ability. After reading a bit about that attribute, the prota throws himself on the bed and says that all the knowledge he has acquired doesn't even come close to what there is to learn, but if he masters the new ability, he could become the most powerful awakener in the world. Intrigued by the gift, he remembers the being that sent him back and, concluding that thinking about it won't change anything, he decides to just focus on his current goal, since he needs to be strong enough to face the monsters that will come. After all, even if his sister's illness is cured, she needs the land to continue having a life. The next day, in a certain unapproved dungeon, Shirasaki is happy to finally find the gate. It is revealed that an unapproved dungeon refers to those that have not been discovered by anyone, because when that happens, the responsible party must present themselves to the association and, after the organization measures the magic levels inside the dungeon, the awakened can begin the cleansing, always in groups according to the dungeon's classification. Ignoring this fact, our boy states that it will be faster to use his knowledge and find unapproved dungeons alone, since even if unforeseen events occur, he can rely on the Akashic Records. Quickly, he activates the ability and starts reading a book, concluding that there are no problems in that place. Suddenly, a group of D-rank skeletons appears. With the reading interrupted, the protagonist grabs his knife and starts the cleanup. Confident that, against that type of enemy, his current self will manage. Delivering more blows, our boy decides he will keep up that pace until he levels up. We see that he did this for a few days and began facing dungeons of greater difficulty as he grew stronger. Thus, in just 3 days, the young man cleared 3 dungeons and reached level 24. Observing the skill panel, Yuya realizes he needs more skills, since, as he faces stronger opponents, the power gap becomes increasingly larger. Due to not having enough magic stones, he decides to spend a bit more time gathering funds. But, upon seeing the analyzer necklace for sale, he realizes that maybe now he can use the item. The next day, we are taken to the auction of magical tools, where to participate, it is necessary to present a awakened card at the reception. A woman asks if the protagonist is part of the Eclipse Guild. Denying, he says that at the moment he is not affiliated with any organization. The receptionist then says that, in that case, he needs to put a different sticker before entering. A blonde girl observes the conversation and wonders if the boy is really an E-rank non-affiliate who was once in the Eclipse Guild. Inside the auction hall, Shirasaki realizes it will take a while until the magical item he is looking for arrives. Approaching, the same young woman from before asks if the seat next to him is free. Looking at the sticker on her jacket, the protagonist wonders how a D-rank is not affiliated. Once seated, the girl asks if he has ever been part of the Eclipse Guild. With confirmation, she says she asked because, as the guild is one of the rising ones, someone leaving is quite strange. Being honest, our boy says that the organization values strength above all, not being suitable for someone without natural skill. Embarrassed, the young woman apologizes for the question, while thinking that, indeed, the rumors were true. Realizing she hasn't introduced herself, the girl says her name is Noa Hoshikawa and that she also does not belong to a guild. Smiling, the protagonist introduces himself as well. After some time, the moment for the analyzer necklace arrives, and the auctioneer announces that the minimum starting bid is 500,000. The awakened present begin to comment on how they do not know the item and how it is not worth paying that price. Reflecting, Yuya says that magical items should not be owned by a single person, as they increase in value as they acquire more skills. Therefore, having many users of the same skill is beneficial, especially if they deal damage. The blonde girl says that the seller of the item is being very greedy, but she is taken by surprise when the protagonist raises his hand and places the first bid. Everyone around starts to question whether the item's skill is good, while Noah tries to make the young man reconsider. Not caring, our boy just smiles when the auctioneer bangs the gavel and declares him the owner of the necklace. Irritated, the girl says he needs to choose more wisely, even if he really wants a new skill. With the item in hand, the protagonist says, "It's all right," while thinking about how the skill is worth more than the 500,000 he paid. Suddenly, a message arrives on both of their phones and, thus, they say goodbye before going their separate ways. The next day, we find out that the email was from the association asking for recruits for a dungeon exploration, specifically awakened non-affiliates, who will receive special bonuses if they agree to participate. Having spent a lot of money the day before, Shirasaki decides to accept, and, quickly arrives at the gate of a D-class dungeon where other awakened are waiting for him. As he approaches, the young man is surprised to see Hoshikawa, who, smiling, says she didn't expect him to be the last one. Narasaka, who is level 26, asks if the protagonist knows the girl. Confirming, he says he met her by chance the day before. A young man with green hair says that since everyone is here, it's better to start the exploration. As his ranking has not been updated, our boy will be in charge of carrying the luggage of the others, who are D rank, which is why the association opted to send a burden for the group. Passing through the gate, a bit frustrated, he says that apparently he won't be able to fight this time. Sometime later, the guy in golden armor says that the protagonist doesn't need to be nervous, as he is, in the midst of D rank awakened, with Noah, who has the magical swordsman skill, being the strongest. The group ventures a bit deeper into the woods, until they bump into the Gigachorn beetle, classified as E. Shouting, Narasaka says they should start by forming the discussed formation. Then he and the young redhead charge at the creature. Thinking, while observing the blonde girl, the Prota says that the swordsman's skill allows her to gain a high-level extra attribute, being something rare to happen at the moment of awakening. Entering the fight, Hoshikawa fires her purple lightning shot, causing a huge explosion and forcing the duo in combat to retreat. Yuya is left speechless by such power, while the armored boy mentions he heard rumors that a famous guild has its eye on the young girl. The group resumes walking, and side by side with the girl, the Prota apologizes for speaking about her without permission. Noah says she doesn't mind, but it seems he still has something to ask. Getting straight to the point, the young man asks if she was called by the Eclipse Guild. Confirming, the swordswoman says she declined the offer after hearing his story, because she doesn't like guilds that disregard awakened individuals who are less talented. A bit surprised, our boy simply says he understands. After the conversation, we find out that the team has advanced a bit further until they reach the boss room, which is a D-rank armored mantis. The monster strikes its first blow towards the girl, but Narasaka steps in front. Then, the others also advance. The swordswoman says it will be a tough battle, while the armored young man asserts that the creature's speed isn't that impressive. Our boy just watched the quartet deal constant damage to the enemy, and, in less than 10 minutes, the mantis was defeated. Relieved, Hoshikawa says that the monster has finally fallen. However, Shirasaki notices that something seems off and, worried, tells the others to wait a minute. The creature's armor begins to crack until it explodes, scattering debris everywhere. Everyone's eyes widen, as now they will have to fight an unarmored C-rank mantis. Realizing that this is the boss's second form, Narasaka orders everyone to prepare. Closing her eyes, the swordswoman awaits her end. But suddenly, Yuya appears in front of her and, using most of his abilities, apologizes for the delay while asking his ally to leave the creature to him, showing that he is more than determined to stop the enemy. Reading the information about the Divine Eye of Prophecy skill, our boy says that it is activated under specific conditions and for some reason will transform into something that no one can use. Being a lost skill, using the advantage he has, he waits for the creature to approach, to try to strike with his knife, but ends up being forced to retreat. In shock, Noah says that the boy is reading the enemy's movements and defending against all attacks. Even being an E-rank awakened, resisting as much as possible, the Prota states that he needs to find an opening to counterattack, but ends up being caught off guard by a move from the mantis. We discovered that the Divine Eye of Prophecy forces the user to deeply understand the target of their prediction. For otherwise, the prediction does not work, and moreover, wrong predictions may be shown, as happened at that moment. This being one of the reasons why the Awakened stopped using the ability, since the frequency of unique monsters increased. Using the weapon he has, Yuya tries not to be defeated, realizing next that he has a way to reverse his obstacles. Through the ability of the Akashic Records, after taking another look, he spins the knife between his fingers and, apologizing to the enemy, he says he can see through everything. A sincere exchange begins and the praying mantis manages to dodge the blows, but our boy claims he is not done yet and activating the propulsion attribute along with the physical reinforcement, delivers another set of blows, hitting the creature's body in different parts. Still in shock, Noah thinks that the boy can also identify the enemy's weaknesses and decides to ask who he is. Still standing, the creature manages to dodge another attack and starts to fly to create distance. However, it ends up being hit in the leg by the protagonist's knife. He stares firmly at his opponent and says he warned that he could see through everything. After identifying the exact spot to deliver the final blow, Shirasaki asks for Hoshikawa's sword, who, even not understanding anything, throws his weapon to the young man. Seeing that the praying mantis is close enough, our boy strikes the sword at the creature's head, and several level-up messages and other advancements appear. The rest of the group continues to not believe what they just saw and, taking the lead, Narasaka asks what happened and if the young man is really rank E. Without giving many details, the protagonist only says he has some particular circumstances, but, if possible, he would like everyone to say they defeated the boss together, while thinking about how what he is doing is something rare, since many awakened try to deceive people, claiming they are stronger than they really are, so he cannot ask for much. The armored boy agrees, even though he is a bit hesitant, as the young man risked his own life to protect everyone. With everything resolved, Noah thanks for our boy's work. Returning the girl's sword, he says the item was of great help. When praised, the protagonist says that other higher-level awakened could have defeated the enemy much more easily. Hoshikawa says that this only makes him more incredible, but realizing he is too close, steps back and states that he has fought in dungeons alongside stronger people, but seeing someone subdue an enemy with such skill and experience was the first time. Therefore, the boy should just accept the compliment. Smiling, Shirasaki thanks, while the girl says he finally understood. The group arrives at the core, which only appears when the boss is defeated. We discover that in the dungeons under the city's administration. The cores are often left to train newcomers, but there are still those that are destroyed, because there is a risk of the number of monsters becoming too large. A strong light emerges when the protagonist strikes the core, and when the process ends, we see that he gained a new magical item, called Praying Mantis Knife. Surprised, our boy realizes that, even though the weapon does not grant abilities automatically, it still performs excellently. Narasaka approaches and says that the young man should keep the dagger, as he defeated the boss, and that is also a way for the group to show gratitude. Smiling, Yuya decides to accept and, after swinging the knife a few times, says that it seems to have very good usability. Thus, everyone leaves and, in the end, the protagonist is left alone with Noah, who asks if he could share his contact, as there is something she would like to discuss. After getting the number, the young woman says with flushed cheeks that the young man can call her by her first name, just so they are not so formal all the time. The protagonist says he is looking forward to continuing to work with the girl. After arriving home, he realizes he did not check his status after defeating the praying mantis, and when opening the panel, he is shocked to see that the level of the Akashic records has also risen, and now it is possible to see basic information about dungeons that will still appear. Perplexed, our boy clicks to see more and realizes that, in addition to the appearance time, information about rarity and level is also available, which means that the time for searching for unapproved dungeons has ended. After analyzing the list a bit to choose his next dungeon, he stops. Upon seeing the stamped Beast Cave, Class C, and the next day, he heads to the location. Your first enemy is a boar with red horns that has an impressive charging power, able to even defeat an awakened being above level 40 with a single blow. The creature decides to charge. Using its new dagger, Yuya tells it to shut up while delivering his first strike, concluding then that the creature is much weaker than the mantis. Using the knife sharpening skill, our boy delivers a fatal blow, causing the boar to collapse in a puddle of its own strawberry juice. With the victory, the young man levels up to 31. Thinking, he says that the dungeon has a certain level of difficulty, as he had researched and, moreover, it was possible to test the performance of his new weapon. The problem was that he only leveled up once. Our boy analyzes the calendar and realizes that, to avoid what happened in his past life, he needs to prevent the first disaster, which makes him restless, given his pace. After finishing the dungeon, he exits and, still in thought, says that the things he can do are limited, but he needs to reach at least level 60 before the disaster. However, his current obstacle is that the appearance of high-difficulty dungeons is a rare occurrence. Suddenly, Yuya notices that a new dungeon is about to appear and, to his surprise, its ranking is S, possibly an extra dungeon, which, besides being rare, is of high difficulty, but offers excellent rewards. Reflecting, he wonders if he should really take such a risk, even knowing that, in the past, a dungeon of that type was impossible to clear. We are taken to the hospital, where the protagonist asks his sister to make sure to listen to the nurses. While Kana asserts that she is no longer a child, we find out that the girl was hospitalized to check the progression of the syndrome. Leaving, the boy promises that he will cure his sister soon. Exiting the building, he has the impression of seeing Arisa, but, convinced that he was mistaken, decides to return to his plan of facing the rare dungeon, even knowing the risks. We see that during the last few days, our boy has leveled up as much as he could. Upon arriving at the location, he finally understands why no one has ever been able to clear that dungeon, and says he never imagined a dungeon would appear inside another. About to enter, Shirasaki concludes that he will have to clear the extra dungeon first. We discover that the dungeon is called Rock Fortress and is Class C. Looking around, the protagonist wonders if it's possible for another dungeon to appear, deciding next to check where the deepest part is. After identifying which entrance to take, he comes face to face with D-rank golems. Realizing he will be attacked, our boy moves forward and jumps, while stating that he has no time to deal with the creatures. Running, he says he knows it's rude, but he needs to reach his goal. Shortly after, the young man arrives at a rock wall with some embedded crystals, and after sneaking through a crack, realizes he will have to face the boss, which is a Red Sea rank golem. Furious, the monster prepares to deliver a punch, but Yuya manages to dodge using one of his skills and appearing in the air, begins his first attack with the mantis dagger. The enemy counterattacks, forcing him to retreat. Even with the level difference, the protagonist concludes that the only problem there is penetrating the creature's armor. As slashing attacks don't work, he decides to use the hardening skill and, after delivering another blow, smiles upon realizing that his strategy is working. Charging for the attack again, our boy states that this will be a battle of endurance. Without hesitation, he charges at the big guy again, until he manages to land a fatal blow. That makes the golem crash to the ground, dead. Breathless, the protagonist says that the battle lasted almost 30 minutes, but somehow, he managed to win. Now, at level 40, he decides to focus on the main event and, approaching the core, he states that, this time, if the information from the records is correct, there is an infusion of magical power in that core. Upon placing his hand on the item, a strong light illuminates the entire cave and, suddenly, the sphere shatters into several pieces, giving way to a kind of portal. Excited, Yuya concludes that inside is the extra dungeon that no one was able to clear in his first life. But that's okay, because he is ready to see what the place is made of. We are taken to another location, where someone tells Daiichi that it's the second time he has failed. Desperate, the boy says there is a reason for that. Turning around, Misaka Ren, master of the Eclipse Guild, asks if the reason is really good enough to convince him. Remembering a girl, the leader says that she was the first in the guild to possess a unique skill. We discovered that he is talking about Arisa, who, a few days after the meeting with Grey Fang in that dungeon, during another battle, finally reached level 10 and, with that, a unique skill called Almighty Enhancement. Quickly, she reported to the guild master, who stated that this happened because she awakened to a natural skill, being also an exception, since normally this happens when a person becomes an awakened. Thus, the young man taught her that there are natural skills that only manifest after reaching a certain level. Moreover, those with unique skills perform better than others, which means that the young woman will become a high-level awakened. Miyanaga quickly realized that Misaka was right, as her skill, besides allowing a greater variety of buffs, is also at a completely different level, to the point of getting her accepted into a high-ranking group, which helped her reach level 26. The only problem was that her power awakened anger in some, yet she is determined to achieve her goal. At the present moment, the guild master asks if the duo is ready. The girl and the envious guy say yes, and thus the trio heads to a well-known dungeon. We are taken to a Class E dungeon. Thinking, the young redhead says it's hard to believe that just over a week has passed, revealing next that, due to the unexpected appearance of a stronger monster, they were forced to leave. But now, they have returned with the leader, who is a rank B awakened. Kamachi says there was no need for the young man to go personally, but he says something is bothering him. Upon arriving in the trap room, the young redhead asks if it wouldn't be better to defeat the boss at once. Smiling, Misaka says that's exactly why they are there, then placing her hand on the crystal, causing a high gray fang of rank C to appear. The duo is left speechless, while the white-haired young man says he suspected something when he read the report. We discover that the monster that appears corresponds to the level of the one who fell into the trap, which is why the creature is larger this time. The creature charges at the guild master, who decides to retreat. Arisa asks if she should attack, but he denies and, using his skill, delivers several consecutive blows. With strawberry juice splattered everywhere, he says that monster can't even be considered an enemy. Seeing the young man deep in thought, the girl asks if something is wrong. Confirming, Ren remembers that it was Shirasaki who saved the day when Daiichi fled, which means the beast was at the level of the guy who ran away, but Yuya, who was of a lower level, handled everything alone. Smiling, the leader says that, in fact, there's nothing wrong, but he should thank the young man for protecting the valuable members of his guild. Then, he changes the subject and asks if the duo is ready for a highly rewarding dungeon. Excited, the red-haired guy says he is more than ready. When asked where he got that information, the master disguises it and gives a flimsy excuse. Caught up in her thoughts, Miyanaga remembers that last week, many incredible things happened. But it was all thanks to the Prota, who saved her. That's why she wants to express her gratitude the right way. Misaka says that now that they've taken care of that matter, it's time to deal with the boss. The duo agrees, yet the young redhead can't stop thinking about how she needs to send a message to Shirasaki later. We see a dark shadow emerge from the body of the defeated creature and begin to move toward the guild master. Meanwhile, in the extra dungeon, called Judgment Chamber, our boy is shocked at how things are on the inside. Stepping out of the portal, he analyzes the field he is in and concludes that this was what was expected from such a dungeon. Suddenly, the portal behind him disappears, which means that to complete the mission, specific conditions must be met. Suddenly, a large green bird appears and attacks him. After dodging, the proto realizes that this is a wind bird, rank C. The creature flies back toward him, but ends up taking a dagger strike. Relieved, our boy says that at least he managed to defeat one. The problem is that there is a group of birds in the sky, waiting for the right moment to attack. After some time, he managed to take them all out and decides to open the Akashic records of that place. Reading the book, Yuya discovers that the extra dungeon has 2 layers and it is necessary to complete each mission to proceed. The first being a battle against waves of monsters that keep appearing for 36 consecutive hours. Even finding that brutal, the protagonist feels relieved to have the skill of the records, concluding then that he will have to be careful with how he uses his MP, including the divine eye of prophecy, even knowing that there is another challenge after finishing that mission. He decides to put that aside for now, as he has more urgent problems ahead. Charging in with all his power, our boy tries to take down that horde of level 30 to 35 monsters by himself. An ogre tries to crush him with its club, but he manages to defend himself with his other dagger, which ends up breaking in the process. Facing the enemies, Shirasaki realizes that confronting them all with just a knife will limit his options. Thus, he throws what's left of the enhanced dagger at a goblin and, jumping, he grabs the sword that the goblin was using, which will give him more attack options. Now, at level 41, and with 2 weapons, the protagonist says it's time to go all out. After hours, we see that the young man is exhausted, to the point of finding it hard to stand. Even so, he keeps swinging his weapons non-stop as he knew, from the moment he entered, that it would be a tough mission. Suddenly, a level 40 high gray fang appears, showing that it also wants to play. Facing the creature, our boy says that this is indeed a hellish battle. But quickly, he remembers what happened in his past life, and jumping in the air, he asserts that he has been through worse hells. After defeating the enemy, he reaches level 47 and decides to move on to the next. 35 hours and 50 minutes later, the protagonist tries to hold firm to face the remaining 9 minutes. Thus, giving it his all, he finishes off the remaining enemies, until a message appears notifying that the mission has been successfully completed, and from that moment, the calculation of the challenger's achievement score will begin and that results will be available in 12 hours. A cabin appears in the middle of the field, and Yuya decides to go to the place to rest until the report is released. Sitting inside the cabin, he takes a deep rest sphere, which cleans the body of dirt and increases HP recovery during sleep. Feeling that the next mission will be tougher, our boy starts to prepare his body and mind with the potions he brought, before lying down and taking a nap. 12 hours later, he wakes up and goes outside to stretch, until a message appears saying that the challenger defeated a number of monsters above the limit, and moreover, at the start of the mission, it was confirmed that the young man's level did not exceed the dungeon's standard. Therefore, extra points were granted. A strong light appears, and out of nowhere, a judgment chamber key lands in Shirasaki's hand. Thus, he must decide between attempting the challenge or returning within an hour. But if he chooses the second option, he will no longer be able to use the key. Analyzing the gate, our boy decides to think a bit and, determined not to back down, he activates the skill of the records to gather information. We see that there is a simple objective for the final mission, which involves one of 3 types of monsters, including a giant cyclops and a fire salamander. The protagonist concludes that both are very powerful, but with limited attack patterns, which means that only the 3rd monster is the most complicated. After passing through the gate, he comes face to face with a clearing in the forest and realizes that his opponent will be the hardest of the 3. A voice warns that the final mission has begun, and the young man needs to defeat the dungeon boss, which is a Silver Eagle Knight, rank B and level 65. Our boy tries to stay calm upon seeing the creature above his head, but suddenly the enemy makes a different move and, delivering the first blow, shows that it can see the future. Yuya ends up being thrown far away, but manages to stay on his feet thinking. He says that if he had been attacked head-on, he would be dead. The biggest problem being the fact that the creature has sealed his divine eye of prophecy. We discover that the boss has the ability of golden eyes, which grants the user extraordinary reflexes and superhuman vision. Thus, the knight uses his eyes to predict the boy's movements and discover what his future actions will be. After dodging a blow, the eagle decides to counterattack, but the protagonist manages to escape unscathed. Worried, he says that until the future becomes clear, he won't be able to use the divine eye of prophecy against the enemy, which makes it his biggest threat so far. Knowing that it can also see the future, our boy thinks about how the difference in raw power will directly determine the outcome. This considering that the level difference is useless. Emerging from the sword battle, the boss delivers a blow. Shirasaki concludes that if he gives enough distance, the next attack will not be good at all, for the creature will absorb all the mana around and release it with all its power. Proving this point, the knight fires a magic cannon. By a narrow margin, the protagonist manages to dodge to the side in time, while thinking that this can only be a joke. However, suddenly, the eagle appears behind him and, using its leg, kicks the boy away, causing his body to crash hard against the trunk of a tree. Injured, our boy says that, as expected, the difference in raw power is simply too great. However, everything would be different if he could use his divine eye of prophecy. Suddenly, the young man remembers that, in this second life, he gained numerous powerful abilities. But the reason he managed to fight until the end, despite his lack of talent, was because he faced his own weakness. With this in mind, he decides to deactivate his abilities, to access the origin of his strength. Facing the enemy, the protagonist says that now he will remember what it was like to fight as a weakling. Noticing something, the knight begins to back away, while Shirasaki says it's time to throw down. Running, he remembers that he first needs to consider the opponent's abilities, since the enemy's weapon can be divided into 3 types, and his golden eyes and physical abilities are far superior. Besides the fact that he cannot create distance, due to the magic cannon, the knight strikes again with his sword, while the boy keeps his attributes deactivated. Giving it his all, he dodges more fatal attacks, thinking of a way to counterattack so he doesn't end up at a disadvantage. Unable to use healing potions, our boy realizes he is about to be checkmated. But, changing strategy, he starts running towards the enemy. Surprised by such agility, the creature wonders how that is possible, while the protagonist asserts that there is only one way to resolve that situation. Carefully analyzing his opponent, he finally finds a weak point and, giving it his all to dodge the constant attacks, he concludes that he needs to do it now. Holding a potion, Yuya watches his enemy charging at him. Throwing the potion, he realizes that the eagle has put more distance between them, revealing that it cannot move during the magic cannon's charging phase. Our boy seizes the opportunity and, as his sword is thrown far away, states, smiling, that his goal goes beyond that. We see that his dagger broke the vial of the potion that was thrown, to force the knight's cannon with more magic, which will cause it to explode. As planned, a great explosion occurs. Still, the eagle survives and continues holding its sword. However, amidst the cloud of dust, it is attacked by Shirasaki, who activated the ability of the divine eye of prophecy to show that it is now his turn to attack. Knowing he can no longer be reached, he advances again and attacks, using all the physical abilities he has available. With nothing to do, the knight is struck in various different parts and decides one last time to try using his magic cannon. The protagonist realizes that the enemy is recklessly absorbing magic, despite the imminent self-destruction. Flames surround the boss's body, who realizes, too late, that the boy was able to escape and is now coming from the air. Screaming, our boy strikes the knight's shoulder, who finally falls to the ground completely defeated. With the victory, a message appears notifying that it is now possible to exit the judgment chamber, and, with that, Yuya reaches level 57. The mysterious voice says that the conqueror of the dungeon will be rewarded based on achievement points and completion details. After taking the potions he needed, the protagonist wonders what his prize will be. For completing the hardest mission being 10 levels below the standard, it is revealed that 2 special rewards will be granted, the first being the ability of infinite storage. Astonished, the protagonist states that he has never seen anything so powerful in his past life. A strong light shines again to reveal the second reward, which is a sword very similar to that of the Silver Eagle Knight, possessing 3 different and equally powerful abilities, in addition to growing in power as the user grows. Holding the legendary sword, our boy says that, without a doubt, his effort was worth it and, upon seeing the gate, he decides to go back home. Outside, he can't wait to rest a bit, but ends up seeing that he has a message from Arisa. The protagonist is happy to know that the girl has awakened a natural ability, but, upon reading that she will participate in a large-scale guild raid on July 1st, he realizes that something is wrong, since such an invasion should only occur on the 7th. Running, he concludes that everyone is in danger. We see Miyanaga and her group again, about to enter the dungeon. We discover that this is a rank B dungeon called Desert Land. Excited, Takahashi Isuyoshi, master of the Warriors Pride Guild, says everything happened as Misaka said. Agreeing, Itu Ryota, master of the Great Wizards Guild, says there's a good chance they will get a first-rank magical artifact. The leader of the Eclipse Guild claims the place must have several items and they can divide them among themselves. Suddenly, the boy calls for Arisa, who gets startled. Approaching, he says the young woman's ability will be indispensable, so she should use it freely. Thinking, the girl agrees that she must give her all, since she was invited to be part of the team. Suddenly, she remembers to check her phone and realizes that Shirasaki hasn't replied, concluding next that at that moment she needs to focus on clearing the dungeon. 2 hours and several defeated monsters later, Ren says it's showtime while facing a rank B Minotaur, the dungeon boss. Shouting, he asks everyone to take their positions and attack. The group obeys without hesitation and begins the battle. Shocked, Miyanaga says she now knows what a high-level awakened attack is. The white-haired guy orders her to use her ability immediately. The young woman obeys and Misaka summons her sword called Helheim. After delivering a single blow, he says that is the end, while everyone is in disbelief at how powerful the weapon is. The other two guild masters say that the reward has finally arrived, upon seeing the core. Going ahead, the leader of Eclipse claims he has been waiting for that moment for a long time, stating next that the portal should open soon. Intrigued, Takanashi questions whether he won't destroy the core. Catching everyone by surprise, Ren says he wouldn't do that even in his dreams. After all, that was his true objective. The same black shadow from before emerges from the Minotaur's body and goes straight to the boy, who, smiling, says it's time for the big reveal. The other members ask what the hell is happening, and what that would mean. Starting the explanation, Misaka says he has a unique ability that allows him to extract the shadows of those he kills and use them as his subordinates. Confused, Arisa questions why he hid that all along. Without answering, the boy says that as a side effect, he can communicate with the creatures, and that's when he learned he was chosen as a leader. Thus, when he accepted the proposal, he was properly taught and discovered that the magic of that core can open a gate from which unseen monsters will emerge, initiating the first disaster, called the Vanguard of the Black Shadow. That will have him as its leader, so everyone there must obey him and become shadows too. In disbelief, the other two masters ask if that was the goal of that attack from the beginning. Confirming, Ren says he needed to gather those with the right abilities, and even though his plan was to wait another week, everything changed because of Arisa, who has a unique ability that will exponentially increase his power, being much better than recruiting a bunch of people. The girl questions since when the young man was planning that, and he says since always, then asks if she didn't find it strange that her mother had stage 4 magical exhaustion syndrome and was in a great hospital. Misaka reveals she only provided support because she had ulterior motives. The young woman says that doesn't make sense, because when she was recruited, she had no talent. However, the leader states that his ability allows him to see the natural abilities of potential subordinates. That's why he always knew she would awaken, and he eagerly waited for the right moment, even creating the Eclipse Guild, to gather those worthy of becoming his shadows. Pointing at Miyanaga, he says she is the most suitable candidate, so she will be the first. Taking the lead, Itu and Takahashi say they won't let that happen, but Ren activates his power and orders both to bow while they wait their turn. The duo is shocked to realize how powerful the young man is. Screaming, the red-haired girl warns she will cast a buff, but suddenly she falls to her knees on the ground and realizes she is out of magical power. Quickly, she concludes that the leader planned everything, while he approaches and prepares to attack her. Closing her eyes, Arisa questions if this will really be her end, while begging for someone to help her. Suddenly, a blow is struck, and, amidst tears, the young woman realizes she doesn't feel pain. But upon opening her eyes, she sees she has been saved by Yuya. That, face-to-face with the enemy, claims he will resolve the situation. Hope blooms in the eyes of the red-haired girl. Ren says he is surprised and asks why the young man is there. When asked if he really needs that answer, he says he would like to thank, for it was the boy who saved Miyanaga back then and made all of that possible. But apparently it seems that the young man always knew everything besides having a strange power. Remembering the past, the Prota says it was that guy who caused the first disaster, which took the lives of many awakened. Being the only one who knows this, he claims he will stop the boy, no matter the cost. Laughing, Misaka says Shirasaki shouldn't think so highly of himself just because he managed to stop one of his attacks. After all, someone without a unique ability cannot stop him, at least not without other awakened of higher rank. Hearing that makes our boy remember before the regression, when one day, the leader fought with Kamachi, who was unable to prevent Arisa from dying. When rebutted, Ren hit the boy, while Yuya could only think about how that was the first time he saw someone die in front of him and ended up deciding to leave that guild. Thus, a few weeks later, the first disaster happened, and almost 30% of the awakened in Japan were murdered, until an awakened of rank B killed Misaka, which made him realize he could have done nothing from the start, starting a tide of guilt that followed him forever. However, now, he has the chance to prevent the first disaster from happening, and that is why he never revealed his power to anyone and focused on gaining enough strength. Even fearing that it might just be his ego speaking, the Prota claims he will fight until the end. Saying he has no time to waste, the leader of the Eclipse Guild decides to put his last piece into play. Thus he summons a Grey Fang to ensure that the young man is immediately eliminated. Seeing the Minotaur and the giant wolf charging at Yuya, Arisa becomes worried. But, activating the Flame Wings ability of his sword, our boy takes out both shadows at once, leaving Misaka completely in shock, just like everyone who was watching. When asked how he has so much power, the Prota says that his enemy made a mistake, for he called him insignificant, not knowing he was facing his worst adversary. The leader of the Eclipse Guild asks why the young man thinks that, but our boy simply says he will understand when the battle is over. Laughing, the red-eyed boy decides to stop asking questions and find out what the young man hides after killing him and turning him into shadow. Seeing his enemy coming towards him, Yuya concludes that the unique ability of the same is related to the sword, and that he can only control the shadows of those he kills, which is why the rest of the awakened are still alive. Upon receiving the first blow, our boy manages to block with the sword, deciding to counterattack immediately to not give the opponent time to recover. Misaka shows he is also fast and thus, both start exchanging blows. Immobilized by a shadow, Daichi can't believe the young man is actually defending himself from the guild leader. Stepping back a bit, the Prota thinks that, as expected, the battle will be challenging, while his enemy tries to figure out where he got so much power. Determined to ensure Arisa does not regain her magical power, Ren decides to change tactics. Seeing more shadows appearing, Shirasaki asks if the boy really thinks that will work. The same says that the shadows are just a distraction. But, after almost taking a fatal blow, he discovers that the young man can handle two things at once. The Prota delivers another blow, throwing his opponent away. Reflecting, Misaka concludes that the problem is Yuya's sword, and that attacking using the shadows is useless. In a rather cynical manner, he apologizes for being rude and says that the boy is indeed one of them, which makes him eligible as his first subordinate. When called a genius, our boy says that in fact, he is not one. For even fighting to achieve that title in the end, he couldn't get there, which means he is just an ordinary person. Ren asks what the boy is talking about. Explaining, the Prota says that it is because he is an ordinary person that he will defeat a genius. The duo begins yet another sequence of absurd blows, until the guild leader realizes he will come off worse. With a deep cut in the shoulder area, he wonders how Shirasaki's energy changed out of nowhere, even seeming like he has unlimited power. With not much to do, Misaka decides to use his last resort, a skill called Soul Purification. We see that the shadows holding the others awake disappear once such a skill grants temporarily an immense physical enhancement through the sacrifice of subordinates. Determined to win the battle, the boy decides to sacrifice most of his shadows. Shouting, he orders Yuya to prepare to die here and now. Seeing the guild leader charging at the young man, those watching fear the worst. Showing that it won't be that easy, our boy decides to use the enhancement attribute of all abilities, blocking the enemy's strike just in time. Shocked, the white-haired guy wonders how he still can't win, even after what he did. Both prepare for another clash, while the Prota states that it's time to end this. Watching the sequence of blows, Takahashi and Itu question what kind of crazy battle this is, while Arisa can only worry about her friend. Pushing with the sword, the Prota claims he will win, as he has the advantage. Breathless, Misaka says he is surprised, but still won't let the young man surpass him. Then asking if he is okay, since his focus has been singular. Looking down, the Prota realizes one of the shadows is biting his ankle and, changing his move, he annihilates the creature, smiling. Ren states that such an opening, in a situation like that, is fatal. Even so, Shirasaki manages to escape the blow. However, the enemy says it's not over yet and charges again. Seeing that the young man has created some distance, the guild leader realizes he will receive a counterattack due to the opening he left, quickly concluding that, even so, his attack will not be stopped. We discover that the essence of his sword is the embodiment of death, and this changes depending on the user's image. Thus, the simple strikes are absolute, to the point of challenging distance just to hit the target. Shouting, Ren declares that this is the end for the boy, but something happens. Our boy states that in fact, he never had a connection with him and there is no specific bond of fate that united them, since his sense of duty could have been meaningless from the start. But still, he was pushed forward by regret and guilt. Therefore, he would like to apologize and reveal that he already knew this would happen. With strawberry juice pouring from the wound, Misaka admits defeat before falling to the ground. With wide eyes, the spectators can't believe this happened and that they are now safe. Shirasaki looks up, relieved, while the still-living enemy says he can't believe he lost. The Prota says he warned him, while the boy, expelling his fluids, claims that he was indeed his worst enemy. Exhausted, our boy also falls to his knees, as the enhancement effect of all abilities begins to fade, which means he will have to be careful the next time he uses that. Running, Arisa approaches. To see if the young man is okay, upon receiving help to stand, the Prota thanks. but the girl says that the one who should be thanking is her, then stating that she finally understood she wasn't dreaming when she was saved last time. Because the boy risked his life once again, Miyanaga expresses the most sincere thank you of her life on behalf of everyone. That makes our boy remember what his sister asked before dying in his other life. Thinking, he says he finally managed to fulfill Kana's wish. Then, the boy thanks Arisa, but before he could explain why, he is interrupted by the other awakened, who decided to join the conversation and talk about how amazing he is. Looking back, Takahashi asks what they will do with Misaka. Our boy says the right thing is for them to hand the boy over to the special division of the association, since those who seek to harm others must face retaliation. Even knowing that people will be upset that Ren was not executed, Yuya concludes that his ability may be useful for uncovering the mysteries of the dungeon in the future. Then, he decides to deal with the core of that dungeon. Arisa says the leader had mentioned that item would unleash a swarm of monsters upon the earth. The Prota says that's true, but now they just need to destroy the core before it reaches full charge. When the sphere breaks, several black shadows envelop the young man's body, who, confused amidst the darkness, asks where he is. Even unable to describe the feeling, he says it feels familiar. Suddenly, another black sphere appears before his eyes. But the Prota ends up waking from his reverie when called by Miyanaga. Lying, he says everything will be fine. While wondering what that was, we see that, after the group left the dungeon, Ren was handed over to the association, and, due to exhaustion, everyone was dismissed. Excited, the red-haired girl says they should go home. Agreeing, our boy decides to accompany her, and, thus, the two leave. Meanwhile, in a certain nation, inside an S-rank dungeon, a girl with long blonde hair observes a creature she defeated, and looking at the constellations, she realizes that one of the evil stars has disappeared, which means someone was able to alter the future. We find out her name is Asakura Rian, and she is an awakened of rank S, level 236, who holds second place in the national ranking. A few days after the large-scale operation, in Kana's hospital room, Shirasaki says that his sister just needs to hold on until the next day. Then he says he will leave, but will return tomorrow to pick her up. Smiling, the girl thanks her older brother. On the hospital's lower floor, the Prota meets Arisa, who says she went to check on how her mother was doing. We find out that, on the way back, the duo had the chance to get to know each other better, and the girl talked about her mother and her ability. Upon discovering that it's not just his sister who has the illness, our boy concludes that he needs to get the cure as soon as possible. Coming out of his reverie, he tells the young woman that it's time to go to the association. Looking out the window, Kana wonders who the girl next to her brother is, but suddenly a nurse appears and tells her to rest. Lying down on the bed, the young woman states that she will interrogate Yuya the next day. She turns around upon hearing the news about the dungeon attack case involving Misaka and finds out that the awakened who contributed to the resolution of the incident has taken the boy's place in the national ranking. We are taken to the association's headquarters, where Suzuki from the General Affairs Department apologizes for calling the duo at the last minute. Arisa and Shirasaki say it's no problem. Then, they answered several questions about what happened that day. Ren remained silent since he regained consciousness. Thinking, the Prota wonders if that means he won't be able to get more information anytime soon. Curious, the red-haired girl asks what the man would like to discuss individually. Getting straight to the point, Suzuki talks about the fact that the Eclipse Guild has been dissolved and that Misaka has been removed from the national ranking. We find out that those within the top 100 are called rankers. Confused, the Prota asks what that has to do with him, and the man reveals that position 86 will now be occupied by the young man. The information leaves the duo in shock. Smiling, Arisa says that's amazing. When asked if that's really correct, the bespectacled guy confirms and says that, besides his abilities being proven, the Masters of the Warrior Pride and Great Mages Guilds recommended him. Thinking, our boy says it's the first time he's been officially recognized that way. Continuing, Suzuki says that several guilds have sent invitations to Miyanaga. Quickly, Yuya realizes that the young woman's unique ability is indeed exceptional. The girl asks if she can think about it a bit, which surprises him. With the end of the meeting, both leave the room relieved and happy. Smiling, Arisa congratulates her friend for becoming a ranker. The Prota thanks her and says that, actually, he's just lucky. The young woman disagrees and says she has something she would like to ask. Suddenly, someone shouting catches the duo's attention. At the reception desk, a guy orders them to bring him the person who supposedly defeated Misaka. Upon hearing his name being mentioned, Shirasaki turns around and comes face to face with Gakuto Shimura, 87th place in the national ranking. The guy asks if the young man is the person he's looking for, and, with confirmation, he states that he stole his place when he took Misaka's position, as he was planning to fight the boy. Furious, the ranker also says that the Prota must have used some tricks to achieve such a feat and That's why he will challenge him to a duel for the 86th ranking. Our boy realizes that the situation is complicated, but he is not obligated to accept that. However, knowing that more people will doubt his abilities in the future, it would be good to take the opportunity to show his power. Approaching, he says he accepts the challenge. 10 minutes later, in the training field inside the association's headquarters, Yuya remembers that his magical power is still not at 100%, as he hasn't fought any monsters. Smiling, Gakuto says it's good to see that the boy ran away, while thinking that he only holds that position because he fought in a group according to the rumors and is an old man's duty to correct a novice's mistake. In the audience, everyone is convinced that victory will belong to Shimura. The announcer states that the conditions for victory are incapacitation or surrender, as killing is prohibited. Starting off, right after the duel begins. Charging into the attack, the axe guy claims he will expose who the prota really is. Using his sword, Shirasaki manages to block the strike. Shouting, the enemy orders him to stop thinking he can defeat him with that level of skill. The spectators comment that, as expected from the short-haired boy, the opponent is completely on the defensive. Worried, Arisa says something doesn't seem right, as during the fight against Misaka, her friend was much stronger. With the analysis over, our boy says he will fulfill his opponent's wish and stop holding back. After taking a hit, Gakuto tries to understand what has changed. Because out of nowhere, the boy became more precise. The prota says it's not over yet and resumes delivering multiple attacks in succession, to the point of pushing the boy drastically backward. The Ranker's fans ask why this is happening. While Miyanaga concludes that Yuya's skill is so incredible, it neutralizes level differences even against rankings. Shimura questions if the young man was holding back before. Confirming, the prota says that if he defeated him quickly, the spectators wouldn't understand what happened. That's why he took some time to assess how much he should hold back. Furious at being underestimated, the Ranker says he didn't intend to do that, but now he will kill Shirasaki. Outside the training field, a girl in a beret hears about the ranking battle. Activating his ability called Crimson Break Slash, Gakuto delivers a deadly blow that cracks the ground near the stands. Thinking, our boy says that ability grants the user immense physical strength and enhances the axe's capabilities. Intrigued, he questions if killing in that type of battle wasn't prohibited. Not caring, the boy says that if the kid is afraid of dying, he should surrender soon. Then asserting that, in fact, he won't give him a chance for that. Defending against the strikes, the prota says it doesn't matter how strong his opponent is. If he makes a mistake, everything becomes useless. Analyzing the situation, the Ranker concludes he will have to break the young man's sword so that defending becomes impossible. Thus, he increases the power of his ability, aiming to hit the weapon. We see that the blade doesn't break, but with the impact, Shirasaki ends up losing his sword, and unarmed decides to use his fists to send the opponent flying. Everyone is shocked to see Shimura being hit. Upon seeing the young man retrieve his sword, the enemy realizes he has a storage ability. Confirming, the prota says the fight ends there, so the Ranker must choose whether to surrender or die. Worried, the boy tries to decide what to do, then asserting that this isn't fair, because out there, doing that against monsters results in death, so they should restart the duel. The spectators comment that this is the dumbest excuse they've ever heard, knowing that using a weapon can seriously injure his opponent. Yuya suggests they fight barehanded. Feeling victorious, Shimura agrees and says he will make the boy regret that choice. Claiming the boy is very slow, the prota, in just one move, throws him to the ground, asking then if that's all he has. Standing up and charging again, the Ranker says it's not over yet. While thinking about how the protagonist is able to read all his movements, we discover that, in his first life, Shirasaki focused on learning enhancement skills due to his lack of talent. That's why, when it comes to real combat, with or without a sword, he has the advantage. Watching the fight, the mysterious girl from before is surprised by our boy's move. Determined to keep his pride as a Ranker intact, Gakuto decides to give it his all and, not caring about the rules, retrieves his axe to deliver a fatal blow. The prota summons his sword again, successfully blocking the axe before grabbing the mantis dagger and striking his opponent in the neck. Immediately the boy falls to the ground, claiming it's impossible he lost. Yuya puts away the knife and looks at the crowd, which applauds him non-stop. The announcer declares the young man the winner, and Arisa is the first to run to meet him. Receiving numerous compliments, the prota says Shimura didn't have much experience in that type of combat. Since he was only used to battling monsters, suddenly, a duo approaches, leaving everyone in shock. This is Tennoji Taiga, who occupies the 82nd spot in the national ranking, and Asakura Ryan. Our boy immediately remembers when the girl asked why he fought so hard, even if it cost him everything. In the present moment, the young woman introduces herself and says she has something she would like to discuss with the boy. The quartet goes to a more private place, and Arisa tries to concentrate to avoid panicking, since she was also invited to the meeting. Asakura introduces herself again, but Yuya and Miyanaga say they know her. Thinking, the protagonist says it was the young woman who defeated Misaka in her past life, being considered the strongest awakened in the country. But he quickly discovers that, in this world, the girl holds the second place in the ranking. The ranker apologizes for disappointing the young man with that information. Confused, our boy wonders what is happening. But, interrupting his daydream, the blonde young woman gets straight to the point and says she would like to thank him, since it was she who should have dealt with Ren. Arisa asks if Ryan knew that the boy was planning. Confirming, the young woman prepares to reveal something, even with Tanoji being against it. After a snap of her fingers, a constellation map appears before everyone. Explaining, the ranker states that her ability allows her to foresee future disasters. But, as it is not a perfect system, it is not always possible to pinpoint the exact time or scale. That's why she would like to thank the boy for preventing the worst from happening in her place. The brown and red-haired guy says his ally doesn't need to bow, but she disagrees and says it is necessary. Shirasaki asks the young woman to lift her head and states that she only did what she had to do. Even so, Asakura says she would like to offer something in return. Being very straightforward, the protagonist says he is thinking of creating a guild and would like to know if Istari Sky Grove could be a sponsor. It is revealed that, to create an organization, it is necessary, in addition to personal achievements, the recommendation of an already established guild. That's why there is no better choice than the group of which the young woman is the leader. Stating that she trusts the boy, the ranker agrees to be part of it, even though she was thinking of recruiting him for her guild. But now, he must gather the necessary members and inform her. Irritated, Taiga says he still hasn't recognized the young man, as he is too arrogant and made Ryan lower her head. Seeing the boy leave, Arisa asks what that was about, but our boy says she doesn't need to worry about anything. Leaving the building, the young woman asks if it's true that he wants to create a guild. He confirms, since the future disasters won't be simple and talented allies will be needed to combat them. Coming out of his thoughts, Yuya decides to invite Miyanaga to be part of his group. But suddenly, the duo is interrupted by Noah, who, after waving, starts to approach. The girl apologizes for interrupting the conversation, while the protagonist thinks of a way to make the situation less complicated. After explaining everything, he introduces the young women and everything returns to being calm. Hoshikawa says she heard the news about the Eclipse Guild and was surprised when she heard the boy's name. Remembering that the swordswoman and her group helped him in the past, Shirasaki thanks, before returning to talk to Arisa about the guild she will create. A bit surprised by the invitation, the young woman says she would be very happy to fight side by side with him again. Therefore, she agrees to be part of the guild with her eyes closed. Noah stares at the two and tries to push away the thoughts that something more is going on there. Then she asks if the boys' group still has a spot, since she has always wanted to be part of a guild. Thinking of everything he has done, the protagonist thinks that he trusts the swordswoman and her abilities, then affirming out loud that she can indeed be part of the team. Miyanaga says she is looking forward to working with the girl, and quickly the two become friends. Shirasaki concludes that now they just need one more person to officially register the guild. Suddenly, an emergency alert starts sounding throughout the building. As a gate break has been detected in a rank B dungeon, thus the awakened must prepare for countermeasures immediately. It is revealed that a gate break is a phenomenon where the amount of magical power inside a dungeon expands due to unknown causes, and to resolve it, it is necessary to defeat the boss and break the core before complete collapse. Asakura reappears, leaving the trio surprised. Yuya asks what is happening, and the young woman says that, in addition to the announced gate break, other breaks have been confirmed in 2 rank C dungeons. Our boy thinks that this is unprecedented, as nothing like this happened even in his past life, which means that something has changed because the first disaster was prevented. Ryan says he will take care of the rank B dungeon and would like the young man to lead one of the rank C dungeons. Deciding to discover the reasons for that later, the prota affirms that he understands. Tanoji says he won't accept the girl letting a novice handle a mission like that. Saying that she understands, the ranker states that, in that case, the boy will join the team and fight under Shirasaki's command. After all, she is capable of handling the dungeon alone, and this is a good opportunity for him to see if the young man is truly trustworthy. The prota asks who will take care of the other dungeon, and we see that the one responsible will be that mysterious girl wearing a beret. With that established, the group prepares to depart. Seeing the young man leaving, Arisa and Noah assert that they will go along. Our boy asks what level they are, and upon learning that the red-haired girl is level 31 and the young blonde is level 35, he concludes that the best option would be to decline, but since the required level to clear a rank C dungeon is 35, he decides to let the duo follow him. Sometime later, the quartet arrives at their destination, and Yuya decides to first deal with the monsters that are already outside. Alongside Tennoji, he strikes blow after blow at the enemies, and when Noah asks him when he got so strong, he chooses to ignore it and enter. We discover that the dungeon is called Hyorei Seikutsu and is known as the Sacred Cave of the Ice Spirit. Inside, the ranker in the red mech asks if they shouldn't have decided what to do before entering. The Prota says that normally that would be correct, but he doesn't need that. Because of his Akashic Records ability, the trio is left confused as to why he is motionless, until other people catch their attention. They are rank C awakened, sent by Asakura. Tennoji says that the leader is Shirasaki. Turning around, our boy states that he will explain the plan. Thus we learn that he, Taiga, Noah, and Miyanaga will be responsible for subjugating the boss, while the others must stay there and hold off the demons. Disagreeing, Ryan's ally says that to face the boss, rank B awakened would be necessary. Unlike him, the two girls say that it's a waste of time to doubt the Prota's plan. This leaves the ranker astonished at such confidence in a novice. With not much else to do, he says that this time he will obey. Hearing that he will be responsible if something goes wrong, Yuya says it's fine, and thus the quartet advances. Thinking, Tennoji says that, even though he's irritated, he is starting to trust the boy. But sometime later, he regrets it when the path chosen by him leads to a dead end. The Prota says that, in fact, that was the shortest path. Suddenly, an iceberg bursts from the ground, being the icy shell of a giant rank B crab. Analyzing the magical pressure of the enemy, the brown-haired boy concludes that it is quite strong, while Shirasaki thinks he needs an item from that place before facing the boss. Turning around, he asks the duo of girls to handle the monster on their own. We are taken to the infirmary of the association's headquarters, where Gakuto finally wakes up after being hit. Quickly, he remembers how he ended up there, and, screaming, the boy asks the nurse where Yuya is. But upon discovering what is happening, he concludes that, on top of everything, the young man is trying to steal his achievements. Therefore, he will take the opportunity to attack when he is vulnerable and show that underestimating him is costly. On the battlefield, Arisa asks Shirasaki if he is sure about that. Confirming, he says he will give all the instructions so that they don't have problems. Noah chooses to believe in the young man once again and asks what she needs to do. Explaining, he says that the monster's weapon is its sharp claw and its defensive power is its icy shell. Since the creature is not very fast, they should keep a certain distance to neutralize the pincers and use fire so that the attacks can pass more easily through the shell. After the entire explanation, Tennoji says it's time. Hoshikawa approaches and begins to strike with her sword, while Arisa keeps her distance. Our boy tells the ranker not to interfere, as this will cause the experience points to be divided, revealing that his plan to defeat the boss includes making the two girls stronger. Noticing the boy's tension, he says that he doesn't need to worry about anything. With her sword ablaze, the young blonde warns that she is ready. Next, the red-haired girl also gives the okay and thus the two prepare to attack together using their unique abilities. Flames erupt everywhere and surround the crab, causing all its armor to simply start melting. With the victory, Noah reaches level 42, while Arisa reaches 31. Perplexed, Tennoji wonders how Yuya was able to predict that this would happen. Hoshikawa receives as a reward the Wish Bracelet, which increases the user's magical power when activated. Approaching, the Prota says that the preparations are now complete, which means it's time to go to the boss room. On the way, the quartet faces a few more creatures and discusses other strategies, until they finally reach the Great Ice Gate. Inside, Noah questions why the room is empty. However, Shirasaki says that the enemy is on the ceiling. Looking up, everyone sees the B-rank Ghost Hydra Queen. Tennoji says that if everything goes as expected, they will win easily. Grabbing his sword, our boy watches the enemy approach and quickly positions himself. Then he and Taiga make the first move. Hearing his name, the ranker says he understands what he needs to do and, after identifying the target, activates his skill called Nyol Sokenton, before throwing his spear at the pink sphere. To his surprise, nothing happens and we discover that one of the characteristics of that creature is that its trunk can absorb physical impacts. Moving forward, Shirasaki says it's okay, because even though no damage was caused, the blow caught the enemy's attention. With a single strike, he cuts several tentacles of the Hydra. The problem is that it quickly regenerates, the advantage being that the process consumes mana. With just a glance, Noah and Arisa understand that it's their turn to attack. The swordswoman is first and, using her skill, launches flames towards the enemy. Smiling, the Prota says that the result was better than expected. Now they just need to combine everyone's talent to deal enough damage. When asked, Hoshikawa says that the bracelet's durability is at 78. With the pattern discovered, Yuya says it's time to continue. Thus, the quartet takes turns attacking. Thinking, Taiga says he doesn't understand how everything is going so smoothly thanks to the young man's plan. The swordswoman unleashes her purple lightning strike, leaving only a crystal on the Hydra's crown. With that blow, the wish bracelet ends up breaking. The Prota says that the durability limit has been reached and, when asking, finds out that Noah can make one more attack, while Arisa only has one left. Stating that item support is no longer necessary, Shirasaki orders them to deliver one final blow. The duo says they understand and positions themselves face to face with the enemy. Thus, after one more attack, the creature begins to transform and takes on the form of the illusory empress of the water spirit. Astonished and not understanding anything, Tanoji wonders how that is possible.